Again, thank you for having me do this. We'll try to make it go through as quickly as we can. We know everybody's busy, but so I titled this The Terrifying Process, but really it's, I'm just kidding. We're really Tiffany, Bailey and myself. Tiffany was a prior employee, sorry. But Bailey and myself are here to make this process easier. So if there's any questions, by all means, just contact us. We can give you examples. We can give you suggestions on wording if you have questions. We're just here to help. So we're talking grants here this morning, but we also have an option for loans that some of the districts know about. And I know Amy, their grant has done some of that work. So what's a grant? What's a loan? Well, a grant is what money is given to the district for practice incentives to producers, and that does not have to be paid back. The loans, on the other hand, for items like equipment or things like that, does have to be paid back, albeit at I believe it's a 3% interest rate, and it's over 5 years. So if you're needing some equipment, such as a different tractor, a pickup, drills, etc., that would be through the loan process, and you'll want to contact Bailey about those applications and such. But here today, we're going to be talking about grants, which again, don't have to be paid back, but they are not a 100% grant. They are a cost share grant for things such as grass seeding, field windbreaks, etc. And the cost share is based on the conservation docket. So what type of practices are there that I can apply for a grant for? Well, they're on the docket, such as grass seeding, rural water hookups, some fencing. We've got brush control is another practice where for the invasive cedars and other plants, they can cut those out, and more of that is done up and down the Missouri River corridor, some of the James River corridor as well, but mainly targeting the invasive cedars. Tree planting, of course, districts are heavily involved in that, and I know that's one of your main businesses. So those and this actual what's on the screen is not a current docket. We've just recently updated the docket for the 2021 year, which will be what these grants that you would be applying for will be based off of. Trees and planting are now based on a per foot category, a unit, and they are, let's see, trees are at 37 cents per foot, and the shrubs, also on a foot basis, are 38 cents per foot. And the weed fabric, weed and pest control fabric is 64 cents per foot now. But these are this docket is what tells you the types of practices that are available for cost share, shelter belt renovations as well. And this is, yes, go ahead.
We have a question about tree tubes. Are they, I think it's asking if you guys give grants for those too, or cost share?
For what practice?
For tree tubes.
tree tubes, yes. And they are on the very bottom of the left side, tree protectors. Down in that tree planting section, tree protectors with a stake. And it might be still $6.50 per tree protector, but let me double check on that. Yeah, it's still $6.50 for the tree protectors. Now we do recognize that the districts may charge more than $6.50 for the tree protector with a stake and installation, but that's the $6.50 is the rate that the Conservation Commission has decided that they're comfortable with sharing the cost of. So in other words, a producer wants to put in a tree protector and you charge $6.50 for that. Well, we will then reimburse through the cost share 50% of those tree protectors. So actually the producer will pay $3.25 and the commission will pay $3.25 for that practice. So, and this is the price side of the docket that you're looking at. See the next page. Oh, I've got some highlighted areas here. We'll move through that. The next page. Okay, I didn't include that in here, but the other side of this docket, it's a 2-page document. The other side of it is the percentages. We do not pay all the same percentage on every practice, but as a pretty good general rule, it's generally 50% cost share. The couple of areas where it's not 50% is in grazing management. So for instance, you've got a producer that wants to put in some livestock watering tanks in the corner of a pasture that really doesn't get used now because it's so far away from a creek or other water source. So to improve the natural resource, the grass resource, it's better to have water spread out. And so the cattle utilize that section of the pasture. Well, we will, if it's a benefit to the state beyond just that landowner to put in that tank and to improve the resource, if it's a benefit to more than just that landowner, we'll pay 50%. If that water improvement is just a benefit to that landowner and his bottom line, then it's paid at 30% cost share. So that's something that when you're talking with your landowners, just make sure that they're aware that, for example, if the cattle are drinking out of a creek or a stream or a river right now, and putting in a tank gets them out of that stream or river, that would then improve the water quality for the rest of the state. And so that type of a situation, we can cost share at the 50%. But if the cattle are maybe drinking out of a livestock dugout or something, that just putting in an extra tank helps that producer, but it doesn't really improve the water quality for anybody else, then we'll pay at the lower rate, which is 30%. So we're coming up, the reason we're having this meeting is because we're coming up on a grant application deadline of March 15th. It used to be that it was April 1st for a May commission meeting. And conservation districts have let us know, and we can understand that's getting to be in the busy part of their tree planting season. So we've moved that deadline up to March 15th, and then for an April commission meeting to review those grants. And then the second time is in October 1st, the application deadline for our November commission meeting for the grants that start then the January after. So again, send your applications into Bailey or myself, or if Bailey and I are gone, to Bill Smith. And I only say gone because some of you may know that I'm going to be retiring in about 3 months. So with that, you'll either send it to Bill or Bailey or my replacement. So those grant applications are reviewed and then by Bailey and myself. And then once we've cleared up any issues that we might have with the grant, from your standpoint, maybe we need a more clear budget, or maybe we need more clear narrative, or suggest additional narrative that might help you get the grant. So once we've done that, finished with that review, then we, Bailey and I, put them out there available for the commission to review for 2 weeks prior to their April 6th meeting. So that's what we're up against now. So we're looking forward to seeing some grant applications in. And again, we're here to help work through any questions or issues you might have. This bottom site prep for tree plantings, just be aware that tree plantings that are in areas that are now currently sod, you may need to cultivate that up and have that sit until the next planting season. But I would just have you contact your local service forester about that. And if
Ryan, I have a question about that.
You bet.
I know you want site prep done the year before and by September 1st. How do we get away with, and you kind of answered it by contacting our forester, but how do we get away with no plantings then, like in West River?
How do you get away with no tilling plantings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to talk to the forester. I know that there's been some of that done. I just don't know how much of it's been done. I remember back a lot of years ago, I think it was Walworth Conservation District did some scalping planting. They had a lot of trouble with it. And they may have planted it just perfectly, but they didn't close in the gap enough, or it opened back up and dried out, and then the trees were dead. So it's just something that in certain soils it may work, other soils it may not. And the forester has got the information that he knows what types of soils you're working with, and if it'll work there, fine, they'll approve it. If in their opinion it will not work, then they're going to make a different suggestion. So how do you do a grant application? Well, you go online, and I think maybe many of you have gotten online already to the South Dakota Department of Agriculture website. Forms are available. They're fillable forms, and we can provide examples of grant applications that were funded, and so that you can see, get some of that narrative, if you will, if you want to use some of that, or if you want to just go by yourself and do that, that's fine too. So I've had questions. I just don't get it. I don't understand. This is the grant application form right here. Page 1 is on the left side with the yellow on it, and then the second page is the budget sheets, budget page. We'll go through this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so at the top, you put in the district information, your address, telephone status, contact person, etc. Point of contact, there you go. Then you'll put in a project name, you'll put in a start date, and we have 2 options for a start date. You can't just start whenever you want. All of our commission grants start either on January 1 of a particular year or July 1 of a year. And similarly, the ending date, whoops, I'm going the wrong direction. The ending date is 2 options, either the end of June of a particular year or end of December. So those are the starting date and the ending date that you'll use. You will fill in, it's a conservation grant, so you'll fill in that dot. Don't forget to put in some narrative. Oftentimes here, it's nice for the commission to see that a narrative such as this project will improve the natural resources of soil quality, air quality, water quality, as listed in the state coordinated plan. Pardon me. So something in there, maybe a short sentence or 2 explaining what the project does, whether it's grazing management, utilizing tanks and pipelines and water hookups and wells, that sort of thing. Then below it, you'll see it has to be an authorized signature. You as an employee may not be authorized. If the Conservation District has given you authority to sign grant applications and grant reimbursement requests and things like that, then you can be the signer. But we would need to see a copy of the minutes that the board has given you that authority to sign these. Otherwise, it needs to be a board supervisor. Not necessarily the chairman, but just a board supervisor. Over on the budget side, basically there's 3 budgets. There's an A, B, and a C. All of these have to match. This total of operating budget A matches this total of activity B, and this total of project partners C. So this just tells us the main categories of your budget. This tells us what the activity is, such as tree planting, or trees and shrub planting, fence lines, pipelines and tanks, grass waterways, whatever. These are the activities. And then the funds that you're asking for. And you'll look back to this docket that we talked about. If you want to plant trees, for example, you'll know that it's a 50-50 cost share. And so the amount of funds that 50% of what you expect to spend would be grant funds. The other 50% would be local funds. And then you may also have some in kind, such as district time spent writing up a tree plan, maybe time calling producers, that sort of thing. And that can certainly be listed as local in kind, but also we can pay for some of those administrative type costs. And you'll see at the very top, the blue identifies that the commission has agreed to pay up to 15% of the practices share as a administrative. So not a lot of districts take advantage of that. They're happy with doing it on their own, but some districts do put in for some administrative costs. And I guess if you do that, I'd encourage you to not only put your salary, but a combination of salary, benefits, and that sort of thing as to your true value. And then we would pay a portion of that. The docket doesn't have a cost share percentage for administrative. Although it looks better to the commission when they're looking at these grants if there is some administrative cost paid for by the district. It's not required that it's 50%. I mean, if you want to go that the commission or the project pays 100% of your salary for those things you're doing, that has been done. Commission has paid 75%. Commission has paid 50%, 25%, and 0 in many of them. So that's a discussion I guess you and the board should have as to what, if any, administrative costs you want to have in the budget to get paid for. Or, if you don't, you can still list administration as an activity over here, but just put all of your expected costs, whether it's $300, $500, $1,000 in the local column, and don't put any here if you don't want to get cost share for that. Then the C budget is again, it totals the same. You can see in this example I've got here for Gregory County, they've put in for pipelines, and they expect that the total amount of pipelines they're going to put out there equals $169,000 for this period of, this was 2018, a 1-year period. That was a lot of pipelines. But you can see here they put in half, it's a 50-50 cost share. Half of it was from the grant and half of it from the producers. And similarly for the tanks and cross fence and shelter belts. They listed those items in the operating budget as contractual services. And then down in the partners budget, the RCNF is what we call the Conservation Commission. So the grant application total was going to be $110,000. So there's the $110,000 in cash, and then the landowner is the other half. Sometimes you'll have maybe NRCS as a practice or a partner doing some in-kind planning, if you will. And that would be listed up in this budget as other funds. You might put administrative or planning, whatever. and then list them NRCS down here with that amount, whether it's cash or whether their contribution is in kind.
I got a question on that one too.
Yep.
I was told when I applied for the urban forestry grant through the Department of Ag, not the one through the commission, that we couldn't use partners as in-kind help because they're getting paid to do it anyway.
Because the partner was?
Yeah.
Yeah. That grant that you're talking about, I think has a tie-in with the Forest Service, the Federal Forest Service. And on the federal side, a federal agency cannot be matching other federal funds. And that maybe is the issue. I guess I would have you talk with, was that Rachel that you dealt with in Pier on the contact Rachel with that question? That was the main cover page and then the budget page of the application. And then beyond that, you move to the narrative, project narrative. And there's some questions here that we ask that you complete and answer. Explain who will be the primary beneficiaries of this project. Blah, blah, blah. And on down. It's just these D, E, F, and G, I believe. So it doesn't take a lot, I don't think. Doesn't take a lot of effort to kind of answer those questions. You can see most of the answers are just a one sentence answer, maybe a couple more if you want to get a little bit more in depth, which you can. So once you've submitted that grant application, then, you know, Bailey and I review it and we pass that on to the commission. So then on April 6th, the commission holds their meeting, and then again, they're reviewed. The grants on that day are first off reviewed in their entirety with each application that's there, so that the commission knows what they have available based on the amount of funds that they have available. And then once they know the grants that they have to consider, they then go through and the grants are drawn in a random order, and then the commission decides on funding. So that process on a grants commission meeting, if there's a lot of grants, a lot being 25 or so, then it could take, 2-3 hours to go through all of those. And then the commission also has other regular meeting agenda items. So it could take the whole day on a grants round meeting. They've gotten a lot better over the last few years and gotten better with the Zoom meetings or Teams meetings, and they can go quicker. But it all comes down to the fact that if we get good applications in and Bailey and I go through them and get everything clear and concise, it's easier for the commission to make a decision too on those. So then what happens after you get the grant? Of course, hopefully you've talked to producers beforehand and you've got their interest that says, yeah, we'll plant trees if you get a grant, but we need some cost share. So then you apply and you get a grant. And so then you need to get from the producer, the left side of this is a request from the producer to the conservation district that they're asking for cost share. This is a step that has come forward in the last 4 or so years, 5 maybe, that we now have to ask that the producer is formally asks for cost share, and then the right side of this page that the district says has checked to see if that producer is eligible, whether that's through the local forester to see if the tree planting that's proposed qualifies. Some tree plantings don't qualify, and those would be tree plantings that strictly benefit that homeowner themselves. So for example, you've got a person that buys 5 acres and they're wanting to just build a house out there in a shed, no livestock, no nothing. Well, that's not what these grant funds are for. These are state funds used for the benefit of the state. So if in that situation, the only real benefit is going to be that homeowner, with benefits to very limited benefits, if any, to anybody else in the state. So those types don't qualify. Types of tree plantings that do qualify would be field windbreaks, would be windbreaks that are maybe living snow fence that improve the road quality. Of course, that's a public safety thing that's going to certainly help more than just that landowner. Those types of things. And also our coordinated plan has objectives for wildlife improvement, water quality improvement, air quality improvement. So if you've got a farmstead that has livestock that a shelter belt will protect, that might be able to qualify. But again, you need to go through that local service forester for them to actually be the ones to look at it and then make that decision that says, yep, it qualifies, so go forward. They'll give you, generally will give you a signed sheet that tells you they've approved. And they don't only approve the site, but they'll also be the ones to look at the species that you're thinking of planting. Again, they look at the soil types, it could be the topography. I mean, if it's a low area that frequently gets wet, we certainly do not want to spend state dollars, limited state dollars, into a tree planting that is going to fail in a wet year. So we need to be concerned about that. And we certainly don't want to plant trees that require a certain type of soil in a soil that's just not going to let them thrive. So that's why the forester needs to look at them. And if the site might work, but a particular species will not work in that soil, then that service forester will give you options, or say, no, certainly we just can't plant them here, but we can plant them over here. Or we can fund maybe the first 2 rows, but not the 3rd or 5th. And we've done that before too. If a landowner has his heart set on a certain species that we suggest not be planted, then we can fund part of a tree planting, but not that particular row, so long as that particular row isn't going to hurt the ones we do cost share. I think many of you may know that walnut has I think it's called allelopathy effect on neighboring trees. So you need to be real careful where you plant those. And again, that's something that our service forester will be able to help with. So after you get the grant, the commission, on the day that they approve the projects, they may approve your project straight up for a full amount, and then that's no problem. But oftentimes we have limited funds available, and they will cut many of the grant applications in an amount. So they might take it down in half if that's what they need to spread funding across more districts. And so just be prepared to give me a revised budget so that I can put that into the contract that I have to draft up. So that's what this page is about. Give me a revised budget if needed. Then I will draft a award and acceptance form, which is a contract that will have the dates, the names, the amount, any conditions. Some of the conditions on the award of the grant would be that you tree plantings, you have to have a service forester take a look at it. Those types of things are on the contract. Then once the date, either January 1 or July 1 comes around that your grant starts, then you can start working on the practices. We cannot reimburse for work that was done outside the time frame of the project. If your project starts July 1, we cannot pay for work that was done in May or June. So, okay. I'm sorry, I could not understand. I couldn't hear.
So we don't track our time before lining up these packages for potential permission.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be your investment, I guess, if you will, in getting the grant. You're going to invest some of your time, but yeah, you can't. If your project starts January 1, then you can start calling people and documenting that time starting January 1, and I can pay based on that. But if you're, for example, if you're starting right now talking to producers and you don't yet have a grant, then no, I can't be reimbursing those time, that time. The reimbursement forms are out on the website. We do require receipts for reimbursement. We frown heavily on any handwritten receipts. We do accept them on a rare basis if they're signed by both the person that did the work and by the landowner. So we won't say totally no, but we need to cover our tracks with the state auditors too, so that if something happens, we've got more signatures on there, and it's not my head or Bailey's head on the block if we get audited. So official receipts would be great. Then based on the actual cost versus the docket price. Okay, so with trees, and the tree tubes that I talked about earlier, you might charge more than the $650 per tree tube, and that's okay. You can charge whatever you'd like, but we just have to go with the docket price. Or if you actually charge $550 for a tree tube instead of the $650 that's on the docket, we have to go with the $550, the actual cost. we can't pay for more than what the project costs. And again, we would pay for half of that docket price or half of the actual cost if that's less. And the landowner cannot be reimbursed for their labor or the use of their equipment, but their labor can be counted as a in-kind match, which frankly is a real good thing to have more match. When the legislature every year looks at these grant funds, they like to see the amount of leverage, the amount of contribution that their dollars are encouraging. And so all the local match, all of the NRCS match, all of the producer match that we can document, the better. So this is a reimbursement form. So filling this out, the grant number will be given once the award is given to you. So you'll put that up there. It'll be like 2021-CSW-007. And so you'll put that up in there, the district name, the grant name, whether it's Coddington tree planting 2021 or whatever you want to call it. We do have town section boxes that rarely get used, but it sure would be helpful when I have to go out and do a spot check of the completed project later on for me to be able to get out there and find where the trees were planted or the tanks were put. We do require you put the county in here. Some projects are multiple counties, with one district being the main award. And so just put the multiple county names in there, if you would. Then on the reimbursement form, people have seen this practice code up here. It's not a code number that we're asking for, it's what's being reimbursed. So if it's fencing or trees or shrubs or fabric or tanks or pipelines, that sort of thing is what we're looking for there. Quantity would be, 1,000 linear feet or 1,000, and then unit of measure is linear feet or rods or gallons of tank, feet of pipeline, that sort of thing. And then the unit rate is what you charge. Again, if you charge more than the docket, that's fine. Put that rate in there that you charge. Now it'll come to the end where I'll oftentimes send this sheet back to you, and I'll have filled this box in with an approved quantity or approved match and cost share, what I approve. So if you charge more than the docket rate, I'll just be giving you less than what you filled in here, and that's fine. I'll give you what I think is what we're allowed to give you, and then the rest again is going to be your local match. So put in your unit rate at whatever you charge, and then the docket percentage. Like I said, generally it's going to be 50%, but sometimes 30. So put that all in there, and that will, I think, self total these columns. So, and then I'll process this, I'll sign it and give you an amount. I'll probably be writing you a letter that says I've processed your reimbursement request. And then if I've given you less, I'll try to explain that in there. And also include this form so you can see. Some districts like doing one of these sheets for each producer, but that's not required. If it makes it easier for you to track the payment that you need to give back to the producer, that's fine. Send me 5 of these for your 5 producers, and then I'm going to total it up into one, and you'll get one check for it. But this might, if you do it separate by producer, it might help you track that better. But
Ryan,
go ahead.
we have a question for you. How would we measure what we charge if it's a education awareness grant?
Well, you will track what you charge, and that's an item that's not on the docket. So we just go with our best guess as to what's reasonable, and generally that's what you submit. So you would submit bills for publishing newsletters, postage, time writing up a newsletter, time for a workshop that you put together, speaker fees, travel to that, maybe if you bought snacks or something, all of those things would be trackable items. And then, of course, keep the receipts and submit those. Then, you're tracking your time. It's nice to get a time sheet. But if you're just maybe a sheet that lists the dates that you worked on the project and then the hours, and that would also be good, acceptable. You see down here any notes that might be helpful for me to understand any of the practice costs up here, or maybe you'll put Joe Smith tree planting down here. And I think on the bottom, just talking again that it must be signed by an approved signer. And if the local district has given you authority to sign the reimbursement requests, then go ahead and sign that, or you'll have to get one of your board members to sign it.
How do we do the mileage? Do we go by state charges or by what our board charges?
You'd be allowed to go by the state, but probably would encourage you to stick with your local charges, because that's something that's going to get fewer of us in trouble down the way if we are audited. If you'll have to pass some of that red face test too. If an auditor comes and says, well, why did you charge a state rate when you've got this as your district rate? So I guess I would throw that back to you guys to be the ones to make that decision. But if you don't have a board mileage rate, then by all means go by the state rate. Now, the next person that's going to be in charge of this might say something different. So I'll have to apologize right now for that. But I know we're coming up on time, but I'll quick go through maybe a few tips. I think we've maybe covered most of these. Include tree plans with your reimbursements if you can do that. Make sure that I'll be able to see where the tree planting is so that I can look at it later. Try to have producers lined up prior to submitting the application, because the commission oftentimes asks at that meeting, do you have producers ready and willing and ready to go? And if you say we've got 7 ready to go if this funding is approved. It's a lot more likely that it'll be approved. If you've got nobody out there, you're just getting the money and hoping to find somebody, they don't like that. Because oftentimes, in many cases, that money then gets reverted back because it was unused and it could have been used by another district. So, like I said, be prepared for a budget cut if we've got a lot of grant applications and not a lot of money. Try to come to the meeting. If you come to the commission meeting on April 6th, come prepared to know that, okay, if we're going to be cut, yeah, we'll accept that, but what's it going to mean to you? What it'll mean is we'll have 3 producers that don't get funding. You know, I talked about that water, whether it's 30% versus 50%. So, I mean, if it's getting cattle up out of the stream as far as their water source, up into a corner of a pasture where they get clean water and stay out of the mud and it improves quality, then we can pay those as 50%. But if it's out in the middle here and it's just going to be a benefit to that one producer, then it's going to be 30%. All right, well, I guess I've really been long-winded. Sorry about that. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Okay, I have one question. If the budget is cut, how do we determine what producers don't get funded?
It's good to have, it would be really good for you to have a priority list. You know, you're gonna, maybe the first in are the ones who get serviced first. And you may get a list of 7 and you can only fund 6. I know another district has taken the 7 and just given everybody the same, a different cost share. Instead of 50%, it was 45%. And then it would fund all 7. So you can do it that way. You know, that's up to you. But having a established ranking system would be really good to help protect you from any complaints. Maybe your first priority will be tree plantings that are within X miles of the James River corridor. Okay, well, this one is outside of that, so he's second tier priority. You know, things like that. If you can line something up, even if it's just, it would be good to have it written down somewhere for you in case that 7th producer comes back and said, well, dang it, they got it and I didn't. Why? Well, you'll have something that can help you pass that test. Well, is there any other questions? And if you feel like you want to ask me something one-on-one, that's totally fine. We can do that another time. Or you can call Bailey or Bill. But I hope that you realize that we're quite approachable. So we're happy to help. We want to make it your project work and be funded.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome, Kristen. Thank you. Tanya, anything else or?
I think you covered a lot of it, and I think you might get some calls.
Okay.
But no, you did great. I think this is well needed for some new employees and to know where to go to find this stuff and stuff, you know.
Well, I think it's a great idea to have recorded this. I mean, not necessarily me, but just have it available for other new folks that come on, or even people that have been around forever and just haven't done a grant in a while, might have forgotten the process. So by all means, make it available.
No, yeah, that's for sure. And you guys, just to let you know, it goes by your local resource concerns too. So if you have a new idea for the commission or a grant, throw it in there because we've done some new grants like pollinator gardens and rain gardens that weren't in the docket, and they have been approving stuff like that. And like my urban forestry grant to help the towns out with getting education out about emerald ash borer and what to replace trees with, they have looked at these grants and approved them. You got to kind of have your cost share, how you want to fund these and how much cost share, because it's not in a docket. So you might want to give suggestions to the commissioners when you approach them on a grant like this. So it's not bad to put a new grant in. Do it. If you think it's a resource concern in your area, just do it.